The Supreme Court struck down Trump on tariffs, or did they? That's what we're going to talk about in this video. The media has come out claiming that it is an outright defeat for Donald Trump. And the reality behind it is they're not only lying to you and showing their own hypocrisy, there is a lot that they're not telling you. And I wanted to talk a little bit about exactly what the Supreme Court did. Whether you agree or disagree with that decision, let me know down in the comments of this video. And I would appreciate it, guys, if you would like and share this video, subscribe to my channel, check out all of the affiliate links down below, order you some Blackout coffee, and some great coffee. You'll love it. Now, what I want to do is I'm actually going to pull up a source from Time Magazine, and I'm using Time Magazine specifically because they are not considered to be biased in favor of Trump. And I want you to look at this article here, or what I've got highlighted here. According to the court ruling, the government will no longer be able to collect tens of billions of dollars in tariffs revenue under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. So, basically what the courts did is they basically said this one law cannot be used to enforce tariffs. You know, this is one of the laws that Trump was using, but it is by far nowhere near the only law that can be used for the purpose of tariffs. And I've actually, as part of this too, I want to talk about how there is so much hypocrisy coming from the left and members of Congress on this, because the reality is, if you look at the history of tariffs in this country, Trump is nowhere near the first president to do this. We have an entire history where tariffs have been enacted by one president or another. And I know that many are going to say, well, it was with congressional approval, and you would be wrong, because Congress actually, though it was originally given the right, Congress voted to delegate tariff powers to the president. In fact, I'm going to see if I can find that law. You know, just bear with me a second because I think it's important. Under the U.S. Constitution, Congress has the power to levy tariffs. However, throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, Congress passed laws delegating limited tariff authority to the president under specific conditions. National security, unfair trade practices, balances and payments, and so on. Those are a few. And now we're going to look at some of the tariffs that the various presidents have enacted over the years during their term. And it's going to surprise you. And it's also going to show a lot of the hypocrisy that we see from the left. Now, as far as the tariffs, there's multiple sections. And the most commonly used sections, there's 4 of them. There may be more. These are just the ones that I've pulled up. Section 201, Section 232, Section 301, and Section 421. Now, we'll just go back through that. Section 201 is safeguards. There is a time limit of 4 years, and we will see that in a few of the presidential cases when we look at those. Section 232 is national security, and there is no duration limit on how long that one can be in effect. The same with Section 301, which is on fair trade, as well as 421, which specifically looks at China. That is China specific, and it's a 3-year maximum. Now, let's look at what some of the other presidents have done. I'm going to go back, and we're going to go back to Mr. President Richard Nixon. That's the first that's on our list. And if we look at his trade policy, he enacted the Trading with the Enemies Act, or I should say, this is where he used his authority. It was the Trading with Enemies Act that was enacted in 1917. So Richard Nixon served in 1971 is when he imposed the tax. You know, it was in the 70s that he served, so it's a few years difference between 1917 and the 1970s. And it was a 10% surcharge on imported goods. It lasted from August 15th, 1971 to December 20th, 1971, about 4 months. Okay, it was a 10% across the board import exchange. Okay, now, Ronald Reagan. Oh, Ronald. We remember Ronald from back in the 80s, the one that gave us no-fault divorce and gun control. Now, there's a lot of people that don't know that about it. Maybe we'll talk about that sometime. Between 1981 and 1989, steel and auto restrictions. Section 201 safeguards and Section 301 are the two sections that he used during his presidency. Steel tariffs lasted, the duration is usually 3 to 5 years. Voluntary export restraints from 1981 to 1985. And again, this is just a few of them. George W. Bush, he used Section 301, case specific. And, of course, Bill Clinton, Section 301. George W. Bush, steel tariffs, Section 201, and so on. You guys are kind of getting the limit here. But then there's old Barry Obama. In 2009, Chinese tire tariffs, Section 421. Chinese specific tariffs. I didn't know that old Barry Obama could say China the way that Mr. Trump can, but apparently he can when it comes to tariffs. Now, as far as the amounts, let's look at this. From 2009 to 2012, lasted 3 years. 35% for the first year, 35%. We hear about the numbers as far as the rates, and they criticize the rates that Trump has done. But they're ignoring history. They're ignoring what past presidents have done. 30% for the second year, 25% for the third year. And we're not done yet. We got Trump's first term. It was a 25% tariff on steel, a 10% tariff on aluminum. And again, no statutory limits. And then we have the ones targeting China, again, beginning in July of 2018 and continued through early 2026. So when we're talking about this, a tariff that was began in 2018, and again, is still partially there, all the way up into 2026, there was a 4-year term when Trump wasn't in the White House, but those tariffs remained in place. Now, why did they do that? It covered $370 billion in imports, approximately. 2018, solar panels and washing machines, Section 201. And then we come to Biden. When Biden was in office, there were tariffs, Section 301, Section 232, and he maintained Trump-era tariffs throughout his presidency. There were several that he maintained. 2024, he increased increases implemented during final year of his term. In other words, he increased, or the auto pen increased the payments, I guess you could say. The same statutory constraints as above. Section 301 requires 4-year review cycles, but again, they get reviewed. So this is just some of the stuff that we could talk about in this to point out the absolute double standard that we see. Even though the Supreme Court, for whatever reason, I've not read the full report yet as far as why they're saying that you can't use that particular law to impose the tariffs that he was imposing. It doesn't matter. There are other legal avenues for him to do what he's doing. In the court, why they did it, who knows? I really don't think that the courts are following the law the way that it should, and on many occasions. But there again, this is just a few of the examples of the media hypocrisy, the media double standard, and flat out ignoring the realities of where we are in. And there's a few other things I want you to think about. Why is it? What's the purpose of a tariff? If you go all the way back to the founding of this country, one of the things that happens is the American worker cannot compete with slave labor from other parts of the world. What ends up happening is these companies will go to China or some of these other countries, and they will pay people nothing. They'll give them like pennies a day to make products that they then sell here in the United States. And the American worker cannot compete with that low of a wage. You literally have wood harvested from parts of Canada, parts of even the United States, shipped over to China, made into products that are then shipped here to the U.S. and sold. Why not use that lumber and make products by American workers and pay it here and sell them here? And the reason is that it goes into how our financial system actually works. And that's something that we're going to do in a future video, and we're going to talk about that. So be sure to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for that video. But what it amounts to is taking and devaluing the American worker while at the same time literally crushing people in other parts of the world in slave labor camps, which is exactly what a lot of these factories and stuff are. We see all the time in the news, we hear about it regularly, about some of these factories over in China to where the workers are literally jumping out the window, and they've had to put bars on these windows and everything else. And that's the abuses. But the tariff, again, is intended to keep companies here in the United States. It's not just about the revenue that it generates. It's about keeping companies here instead of them going overseas, using these, workers over there, paying them slave wages just to make billions of dollars. Okay, that's part of what the tariffs do. And guys, the media is a joke. We do not have a media, and the numbers are out there when it comes to a lot of these major so-called media outlets. They're collapsing. And when the older generation, as they pass on, the media, the traditional media, is going to be going with them. Most of the people get their news and information from podcasts, from channels like this, and that is a growing trend in our country and even around the world. But guys, this is just a short video that I wanted to do talking about the tariffs, talking about what the truth is, talking about what some of the hypocrisy is that we see. And, there's a lot more to come. Be sure to like and share this video, subscribe to my channel, order you some Blackout coffee. It helps to support what we do here. Check out all the affiliate links down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.